The following program contains mature language and potential spoilers. Listeners be advised.
Digging on the comics. Guess I'll still dig them when I'm 6x6. Digging my kicks. Digging on the comics. I like to save them. And I like to trade them. I read them. I need them. I'm living every page.
The entire comic book industry, besides Marvel and DC, is undervalued by the general public. As comic aficionados, as fans of the art form and the medium, we'd like to have a podcast out there that covers the entire rest of the industry, besides the so-called big two, besides just superheroes, so we'll cover them as well. And for that purpose, we will be your underguides. The EO Mac.
Pardon me. Importer-exporter.
Mr. Joe Fixit.
Okay, I'm going to take this and read it tonight.
And myself, Frank.
I'm Diabolu Frank.
I'm Illegal Machine.
Oh, fuck y'all. Then who am I supposed to be?
That's very existential.
Oh, shit, dude. Oh, my God.
After the book we just read, it leads into.
Okay. So, who wants to summarize Johnny Ryan's Prison Pit Book 1?
Oh, no, wait. First, I have a question, Frank.
Sure.
Why, oh, did we ever leave Ohio? And why the fuck
Less
did you buy the
existential.
book? Why'd you buy that book?
Why did I buy this book? Okay.
Like, who told you, what did you read, or what prison rape scene occurred that you were like, let me buy this, and you have the guys read it because it's really interesting?
For $13.
For $13, thank you.
There is a online commentator named Tucker Stone. He writes for the Comics Journal, which you may recall is like the New Yorker of comics, basically. He used to do very snarky, smart review columns at various places, but mostly at the Factual Opinion, his blog. And he also does podcasts. Comics Are Burning in Hell is what it's called. And he apparently was a big fan of Johnny Ryan's Prison Pit. And he thought it was cool and transgressive and blah, blah, blah. And it sounded really interesting to me. So I decided to check it out. Because the 120 page, I don't know what the dimensions of this thing, it's shorter in size than a regular comic book. And it's got like a nice cardstock cover to it. But it's 120 pages that you can read in about 5 minutes.
5
maybe.
minutes.
And who wants to summarize the plot of Prison Pit?
I got it. The lead character...
Is he named?
Nope. Falls into a prison pit.
Well, he's actually in custody from authorities, and then he gets into a fight with one of those robot authorities, and they both fall onto a planet that is nothing but... It's a prison planet.
Correct.
Yeah.
They fight. Then he meets other guys.
They fight.
How deep am I going into this? Because it's like if I say too much, it's the whole fucking thing.
Dude,
Let's spoil the book for them, because if they can hear your summation of the book and they still want to progress to Prison Pit Book 2, that exists for them. There's multiple volumes of this, so just spoil the fuck out of the book.
So after he kills guard number 1, he's walking around.
Quite violently, too.
Okay.
Everything
was
done violently.
Wait, but discuss the dialogue, please.
No. Well,
I don't know if we want to go quite as deep into dialogue.
No. We'll go into dialogue. We'll go into dialogue in a second. Okay, so kills dude. The next part, he goes and he finds this like sort of crucified-looking skeleton guy that's leaking an ooze from it. And this slug walks up and is drinking the ooze, and he squishes this slug. To which he turns around and there's 3 dudes. One of them is a giant with a swastika on him and all this shit, right? And he's like, hey man, that was my slug. And the guy's like, it's just a slug. What's the big deal? He goes, you don't understand because you're new here. That thing there, the crucified body thing that's oozing, that's like a tree. The slug eats the goo that comes out of the tree, and when it does that, it excretes the most powerful drug on all of...
It makes you think you're fucking number 1.
Right. So he's like, so you gotta go get me another one. And this is sort of the journey of him getting another one over the next 100 pages.
And just so you're wondering, we're already midway through the book.
Yeah, this is... Yeah.
What he's discussed, we're already midway through the book.
Yep.
60 pages.
Yeah, 60, 70 pages.
Got into a fight, stepped on a slug.
Yeah.
Get into another fight with some other guys.
So from there he goes...
Actually, I think you put more words than there's actual dialogue.
Yeah. So then he says, okay, no, I'm not going to go get you a slug. And then he goes, I'm sorry, you should really get me a slug. And the guy goes, no, I don't think I'm going to get you a slug. So then he says, okay, my friend here, you need to fight this guy now. So then they fight. and of course it's overtly violent, right? And this happens a couple times in the book where he murders a guy in extremely violent fashion, and then he's not actually murdered, and somehow the guy bizarrely is still alive, but all fucked
Looking
up.
like something from John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah, and you just have to keep killing and killing and killing until he's killed, and then he's not killed, and you got to keep killing and killing. The climax of the book, and that's probably a bad way to put it.
No, it's a very apt way of putting it.
Okay, so the swastika guy after he kills this dude he was fighting, he cuts the guy's arm off. And he cuts the guy's arm off by squeezing a pimple on his chest, and it bursts, and the goo that comes out shapes into an axe that cuts our main character's arm off. And he takes the guy's arm and basically says, "You can have your arm back when you get me my slug." So then he goes to get him the slug, finds a slug, and as he's taking the slug back to this guy to get his arm, and by the way, at this point we're probably 120 pages into the 125 pages, he's confronted by a strange gangly guy who's like, "Hey, don't do that. That's my slug." And he's like, "No, sorry, I'm going to take your slug." And as he starts to walk off, this main character,
The gangly character
to fight the main guy, begins to masturbate himself, and upon climax, his dad paste, as it were, begins...
His man gravy?
His man gravy, his man mayonnaise, begins to form around him...
Like an Iron Man suit.
No, into more of like a Voltron-sized, gigantic, and he's
mech
sort of...
armor.
Huh?
Spunk mech armor.
Vultures. Mighty coming power spoogers.
Gigantor.
What is some more?
I don't know. Let's just finish because we're
Gobzuki.
Godzilla. Oh man. So anyway, he goes after our main character, does a pretty good job of destroying the main character, right?
Again, who by the way looks sort of like a luchador.
Yeah, but it's like blood is the mask.
Yeah.
Because they mentioned anyway. Kills the dude, and as he's laying on the ground dead, missing the arm from earlier, the slug attaches to his arm
and begins to talk to him.
Gives him super strength, right?
Well, and this is a larger slug too. This isn't like a little tiny slug. This is more like a small dog.
Yeah. So it makes now that he has two normal size arms. One arm is just a slug. That's how big the slug is. Gives him superpowers. He's able to jump in, defeat the jizz monster, and then as the book ends, he's sort of laying on a rock. Yeah, give me the book. I don't want to. He's laying on a rock, and the slug is sort of like licking him, like as if to like
licking the blood off of him, or the cum or whatever.
Off of him, and then starts pulling his pants down, exposing, and takes up an entire page. Our lead character's
phallus
crank, spiky crank, and begins to fillet him, and that's the whole story. And then it fades out.
And the artwork?
So that's the story. This is your podcast. So what do you want to do? What do you want to ask us about this? Ask him and then ask me.
Mr. Fixit had a perfectly valid question. How about that artwork?
Are you asking me about the artwork?
Sure.
I like the artwork.
You do?
Yes.
It's very crude.
Fuck crude.
You know what? I don't think that the artwork is that crude, and I think that
that's pretty. Dude, that's the kind of shit you would draw in your notebook in junior high. Don't even fucking try to play that shit.
Okay.
But for the material, it's appropriate.
Okay. Let me rephrase. I don't think that the artwork is crude, but the storytelling is legit. There's movement from panel to panel. These first 2 pages, where your chapter 1 is called "Fucked," of the expanding spaceship and how the camera pulls out, and or when he's falling down the tunnel with the dude. This is not bullshittily laid out. There's thought going into this. This is good. The storytelling, especially with the lack of words, because there are hardly any word balloons in this entire book, I think is fine.
I agree with that.
And I think the artwork is a little more than crude.
No, it's pretty fucking
crude is pretty fucked up.
No, it's money.
Yeah, it's definitely middle school in terms of the anatomy.
Is it weird that I think that's kind of why I like it? It looks like you know how we used to cover we were required to cover our books in high school.
Yeah.
And you would draw shit all over your book cover. Yeah. This looks like one guy you drew on one of the book covers, somebody took him and made him into a full volume.
I have a little 3-ring binder where I have shit like exactly like that, where barbarians are chopping the heads off of people and all that kind of shit. 100% on mark there.
I saw that, and the first thing I thought about was Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, sure.
Art style.
Ligor, quality artwork.
That's exactly what I thought of. If you want to say the setup of the artwork was, I'll give
like
you that.
the layout. What are you talking about? The layout.
I'll give you that.
Panel
but
progressions. Yeah.
That artwork. I mean, with a story, it works.
It told the story. You're not confused at any point.
Did you buy this like at a head shop or something? Cause
Yeah. You were never confused at any point with there being no words in this book what was going on. Like, you can tell what the fuck is happening, where he's searching out the slug, when he finds the slug, and when the slug attaches to his arm, how it has this, it's a badass full page of his nervous system.
Right.
I'm telling you.
It's calculated, skilled, school quality storytelling.
Junior.
So, okay, you guys gonna get mad at me? I kind of liked it.
That's okay. I don't have a problem with that.
And I liked
Tucker
it.
Stone liked it too, and he's an intelligent guy, which is why I bought it based on his opinion.
So, and the reason I liked it is, one, because I read 120 pages in 5 minutes. Two, because I did not pay $13 for this.
I'm sure that helped a lot.
That's an issue that we're going to talk about here in a second. But I will say, although the paper stock and the cover is all nice quality stuff. I mean,
Fantagraphics Books, a respected publisher.
Yeah,
They're
shout
the
out
guys who
Fantagraphics.
published Love and Rockets.
I mean, it was entertaining. I wasn't like, oh, this is boring. Oh, he's chopping up. I was legitimately didn't know where it was going, and it kept me on my toes. And every time I'm like, oh shit, that's some crazy fucked up shit. I wouldn't want to be stuck in I wouldn't be the psychology or the psychiatrist for the guy that wrote this book, because they're going to touch on some uncomfortable subjects, even for a psychologist. But I'm like, wow, this is a pretty fucked up shit. And then the guy begins to jerk himself off and has
Snail hand. Oh, you mean you're talking about the cum armor?
Yeah, and has mecha jizz or whatever. And I can tell you, didn't see that coming. Plot twist that I did not see coming. And let me tell you something. I've read a lot of comic books, and I've watched a lot of fucked up movies, and I've seen, and this is an approximation, somewhere between 78 and 83% of videos on the internet. And I didn't see that coming.
Okay.
No pun intended. And I'm not going to lie, I would be curious to see where book 2 goes.
Yeah.
But not for $13.
Yeah, and that's the problem. As the guy who paid $13.
Yeah.
As the guy who read these positive appraisals of the book, I get a pretty damn good discount on my comics. I do my shit through mail order. I'm not fucking around with no 15% discounts.
Hashtag humble brag.
Right. But well, no, any asshole can go on the internet and do better than that. You don't get a good discount on Fantagraphics Books. The retailers don't get a good discount. I think retailers get like 25-35% off of that. So I sure as hell ain't going to be getting that. I wouldn't be willing to pay more money to read more of this book. If it were free online, I might have kept pushing the scroll button to see more of it. But it's something I'm actually taking money out of my pocket to pay for. No, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I don't care enough for that.
I feel like this is a book, back in our comic shop days, that I would see where the whole thing's in black and white, and it looks like damn near it was stapled together with a stapler, like those books,
right,
books
like mini comics.
Right. That's what I would expect to see. And if I would have flipped through and seen that, I would have probably seeked out another one. $13, my bro, is steep as shit.
Yeah,
$13 is legit cash. I could eat 7 times at Taco Bell for $13. That's a week's worth of food. I read this book in 5 minutes. Yeah.
So that's a major issue. And honestly, even at free, because for Girl Genius, which is a pretty darn good book by Phil Foglio, that was available for free for a long time. I'm not sure it may still be. And I only made it through about a volume of that, and it was far superior to Prison Pit. And it was free. It just didn't hold my interest enough to keep going with it. With Prison Pit, I could have probably blown through everything that he's produced in a fairly short amount of time. I might have been willing to do that for free, or I might have gotten bored and gone to look at
like imagine if there's like 4 volumes of Prison Pit.
Yeah.
How much would that cost you? What is 4 times
That's
13?
$50 or $60.
Yeah. And you would have read it in 20 minutes.
Right.
$60 with tax
right.
in 20 minutes is a
we'll say my discount takes care of the tax. But let's say even if I was getting it for half that price, $30 for 20 minutes worth of entertainment, that's pretty fucking steep too.
Yeah.
So, and this is not like, you could buy an animated movie or 2 for that price, which is going to be of higher
You can buy a video
quality.
game that would last you several hours.
Yeah. So it's very hard to validate this.
I hate that we have to bring that up into this conversation.
But money counts.
But $13 is legit money for a comic book. That's a lot of money for a comic book.
Well, and honestly, beyond the transgressive aspects of it, there wasn't a lot there for me. It was kind of cute how he used biological functions to create comic book materials, but there's only so many times you can bring your dick into play before it's not particularly imaginative anymore. I don't know that he's going to go to an interesting place with the second one. I guess people are pulling shit out of their ginies, but I don't know where else you go. You got a butthole, you got a pussy. We've already done all the cock stuff. You're going to run out of material pretty quickly under those circumstances.
That's true. There is a butthole and a pussy and a cock. You are running, mouth, neck. They touch on all the holes. Yeah, pretty much if there's a hole, it's pimples, pores, wounds. Yeah, but that makes me really want to see where the second book of Prison Pit goes.
Maybe they'd actually have to tell a story at that point.
Okay, so you wouldn't shut up about this shit before we started recording. Now you haven't said a word, so go.
No, dude, it felt like a fucking junior high kid wrote it. I give you your opinion, but I sat through it and it was like if I were to go to a junior high, pick up a notebook, and some kid who was really pissed off and no one liked had drawn his feelings onto paper. Because it really,
you've been
like,
looking at my closet?
where you were kind of like, well, I didn't know. I was reading, I'm like, it was pretty already fucked up, so it was pretty much that's all it could go, really. There was no story behind it. I mean, it was interesting for the first 5 minutes because when you got me to read it, I was kind of like, okay, what are we reading here? And you're like, oh, you're gonna blow through it real quick, and I'm flipping through it. And I'm like, the artwork's kind of weird and funky, whatever. And I'm getting through it, and I'm like, I'm reading the dialogue, and the dialogue is just really stupid. Hey, fuck face, I'm fuck you, and I'm like, okay, and you're just kind of reading it, and okay, I'll give you that the artwork tells a story. Okay, I mean, but was it an interesting story? Not really. I mean, it was watching, if someone were to draw, if you were to describe Jackass and someone decided to draw it for you, it kind of felt like that to me. It didn't really hold my interest. I wouldn't care about a second book. I would demand half my money back for that because it's like, it just feels like one of those things, a project where somebody really pretentious was like, oh, this is so deep and I'm this, and I'm like, nah, man, I just don't see nothing.
I'm certainly not saying that at all. I'm not. No. I haven't read the blog post you were talking about.
Yeah. Oh, and I don't think that was about being deep either. I got to say too. Okay. I don't want to get confused here. It's not that this is deep. I think it's that it was an instance where a lot of comic books try to be punk rock. They try to get to that core of what turns you on, full fun shit, luchadors, cum armor, people getting their arms ripped off in combat.
Sounds like junior high.
No, but that's what I'm saying is that when you get to the core of comic books and what people like about comic books, especially when they're an earlier age, they're getting off on all the surface elements, the violence, the extremes.
But see, that's the thing.
So and I think that what was turning the particular writer on to this project is the purity. Punk rock is a good one.
Have you ever seen Super Jail?
No,
it's a cartoon that comes on Adult Swim. This is like a really bad version of it.
I have to check. He might be involved in Super Jail. That guy, that creator, may be involved in that project.
That whole fighting, murder, masturbation, they do that shit on Super Jail, animated. But it's really the artwork, the story. It's one thing where everything is messing with you at one time, so you can be like, oh, what am I watching? And everything is messing with you from the characters to the background.
I watched one or two of those with you.
You could have two main characters talking, and there's like a rape murder scene in the background, and you're just like, what the fuck am I watching? That I could get. This was just like a really bad version of it. Like he watched that and said, I'm going to do something that fucked up, but at a lower level. It didn't, and I don't get it. Like, I mean, it just wasn't for me. And you've given me
it's not for me either, to be honest.
You give me some weird shit to read. I applaud the guy for doing something different, but it's just, like, I know you're trying to say it's punk rock.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm trying to make the point is that punk rock on a technical level isn't very impressive. It's, just bashing the stuff out. You have some higher quality punk rock, and then you have the asshole garage bands that aren't worth a shit and they don't bring anything to it. But they're still all punk rock, and there's some people, just the fact that it's punk rock music grabs them by the testicles, and they can get off on it the way they can't get off to other forms of music. What I'm saying is that someone who might enjoy a book like Prison Pit is probably enjoying that same punk rock thing where they're getting grabbed by the balls, and they're getting fucking cool, jacked up visuals, and they can get off on that. I need more than that. I'm not a fan of punk rock.
I'm a huge fan of punk. You know what I mean?
But this is, like you said, it's a lower form of punk rock. It's that you're just getting off on being in the garage with the garage band and the amps are going and you're feeling the vibration. If that's all it takes to get you off, then Prison Pit might be your book. I need more. You need more.
Why do you guys make me feel like an asshole?
I'm not trying to make you feel like an asshole. You're enjoying the vibration.
Like I said, when I was reading this, the first thought that went through my head was Super Jail. I'm like, wow, this is like badly done, badly drawn.
When was this released?
See, they didn't say the current. Well, no, that's a third printing that was done in 2014, but I don't know when the first printing was done.
Okay, we'd have to find that out.
I want to look right quick.
I got you to watch some episodes of Super Jail, Frank?
Yeah, I watched at least one. Yeah.
Okay, what did you think?
I thought it is all right, but kind of weird.
Oh, I enjoy them. I would never own them. They're so fucking unusual and just murdering, raping, and it's trippy as shit.
I see a blurb here that Prison Pit won an award for best lettering at the Stumptown Small Press Festival in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, so Super Jail started in 2007.
Whoa, there's an animated. Somebody animated some of it.
Yeah.
Oh, this might be loud. Sorry.
The first volume of Prison Pit came out in 2009.
Yeah, so after.
So you think that it's a bit of a knockoff? Is that what you're saying?
Now, granted, they have money and stuff. I'm sure this guy's an artist by himself doing all this, and I get that. But I've seen other artists. I just read a book on the Mexican-American... oh, God, I should... I picked it up. I went to the library. It just sitting there, picked it up. It was a local artist from Texas. That's what interests me. He drew all his own artwork. He actually researched historical events, and he drew them out.
Talking about Jack Jackson?
Is it Jack Jackson?
He did
about Mexican history, Mexican Texas.
I own some of his books. I'm a fan of his. He's
Really?
good. He does good stuff.
Yeah, I was blown away. I mean,
My favorite of what I've read was Indian Lover, the Sam Houston biography.
Really?
Yeah,
Do you
I've got a copy of. Yeah, I've got it.
I want to borrow.
I picked up the hardcover of Los Tejanos.
that one. Yeah, Los Tejanos. That's
Yeah,
what
I own it. Yeah.
Dude, that was a really good book. I was.
You read
crying.
it already?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to read that one yet.
I read all of it. Not all of it. I didn't get to it because I had to turn in the book. Because
Right.
it's a dense read, dude.
Well, I
It's like-
have to. I remember Indian Lover being a dense read.
yeah, it's a dense read. It's like you'll read it and then you'll have to go to the notes in the back because there's so much history and side characters. But there's artists that can do that kind of stuff. I don't know. I just don't take that.
Why waste your time on Prison Pit when you can spend
Well,
the same amount of money on
if-
Jack Jackson and get a much better book?
Yes, absolutely. This one just felt like I said that same genre of super gel, just like we look me pee pee poop, and I don't know, dude. It sucked. Now I'm not trying to pick on you, Mac. It's just
So he's the extreme negative. I'm middle, and you're the less extreme, semi-negative.
No, what I'm
somewhat
saying
positive.
is I was the kid who drew shit all over. I still do. I catch myself drawing shit on my notes in meetings.
Sure.
To me, this is like my notes come. I'm not trying to say that. I was like, oh, cool. I want to draw pee-pees and poo-poos also. I'm just saying that the main character. I like him for no other reason is that I swear to God I drew this guy in 1991. Like I swear to God I drew this dude. And it's cool to watch that guy jump off of my shitty book cover for my fucking biology class and go kick some ass in some prison world.
I think that's exactly it. I think that's the exact appeal, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It just doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
But I definitely can see it.
so you got
End
you
point.
got the monkeys that dance. Congratulations, Frank.
I really thought this was going to be a shorter one.
Really?
I thought the Prison Pit was going to be like 5-10 minutes worth of us talking.
Okay,
and
well let me go find. Want me to go find one book that we can all
Yeah.
read real
Yeah,
quick
go
that
ahead.
we can do?
Well, see, I still need to talk with this fellow over here about some stuff anyway. So you work on the books while we're doing that.
That book sucked. Oh, dude, I would. Oh.
Okay.
Hey, Pleasure.
He came to our city in the early dawn. Though later he would be called the finest warrior to enter our gates, at the time he was but a curiosity. You see, he stood only 5 hands high, had a lengthy snout, a long tail, and was covered with short gray fur. He was, in short, Cerebus the aardvark.
Make way for Elrod, the albino. Why, hello there, short gray and fuzzy. You have a thing for crushed velvet? Speak when you're spoken to, son. You're making a bad first impression. And stand up. You never leave your mark on the world hiding behind bolts of cloth all day. Sooner or later, you have to take off the bunny suit, kid. Then, I say, then where will you be? Oh, I get it. You're overcome by my presence, awed by the sight of a true king, by the reality of the ruler of Melvinbone, last lord of a dying race, a wanderer, that is. You getting all this down, boy, or am I going too fast for you? Where was I? Oh, yeah, sorcerer and slayer of my kin, despoiler of my homeland. Pay attention, son. Ears that long must be good for something.
Going to look over Cerebus the Aardvark some more. This is going to be issues, we think, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. First story is Black Sun Rising. This is a really fun one. Cerebus runs into Elrod, the parody of Elric that speaks like Foghorn Leghorn, and they both get involved in a cult that worships aardvarks, similar to the tribesmen from an earlier story. And one of them actually dresses up in a Cerebus costume, or aardvark costume, I should say. So there's this mistaken identity where there really shouldn't be any, and lots lots of confusion, lots of goofiness. It's a pretty fun tale. I enjoyed that one quite a bit. From there, it's Day of the Earth Pig. And basically what had happened is toward the end of the previous story, Cerebus got bitten by a giant spider. And so he's struggling through a fever after that. Ends up in the company of a sophomoric army. They have the mentality of high school football fans, fight, 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 right. And they end up adopting him as sort of their priest, which seems to foreshadow stuff that's going to happen in future stories, and with him being embraced as a religious leader despite the fact that he's a small, ill-tempered aardvark that likes to stab people with a sword. Then this carries over into Swords of Imesh, where he's using that army to try to scale a walled city and battle the dictator there. There's a lot of drug references in this story. It's basically the leader is coking up his entire populace and using their coke-fueled delusions to help him build like a stairway to heaven or something along those lines. Lots of cool action sequences in this one. It reminded me a lot of the Conan comics. I mean, most of these stories do, but this one was very heavily inspired by those type of tales. It felt like a Conan story to a large degree. Next story is Merchant of Unshib. This one features the return of Red Sophia. That's much less misogynistic this time. She's still annoying, but she's annoying in a way where you feel more bad for her than just outright hating her. She tries to seduce Cerebus. It doesn't work out very well. So like I said, kind of sad.
Is she supposed to be hot or not?
She's supposed to be someone who's physically hot, but emotionally repellent.
Got it.
She's lusted after by a bunch of other fellows, and Cerebus gets drawn into their bullshit and ends up becoming part of a robbery scheme. And it's a pretty cool plot, and it turns out things resolve in a way that's very satisfying. So I'm finding that the story quality is improving. The art quality is improving. Basically, overall, the book is getting better. But then you get to the Merchant and the Cockroach. And my understanding is this Cockroach character is supposed to be an ongoing feature of the strip. In this particular initial entry, this is sort of a crazy person who dresses like a costumed Avenger cockroach. And it's a big parody of Batman, and it's the sort of thing that might have seemed cute in the late 70s, but after all the superhero parodies we've been subjected to in the 30, 40 years since then, it just doesn't work that great. It's kind of funny seeing Cerebus trying to get over on a guy like that, and them really playing up the madness of the character. I kind of wonder if maybe Moon Knight was slightly influenced by the cockroach, but it's an alright story. It's not great though, and the comedy doesn't land that well. Finally, you get Bedouin by Night. Basically, this picks up some threads from the cockroach story where Cerebus has an opportunity to make himself a little bit of a fortune and loses it, and then finds a way of trying to maybe make up for it some. And it's another one. It's alright. Fun watching Cerebus struggle against odds to try to make something happen where it doesn't look like it's likely to happen. But there's a certain inevitability to it, and while it doesn't have as much bad, easy comedy as the cockroach story does, it's so predictable that it didn't really do much for me.
What does he do now?
What do you mean, Deep Sim?
Yeah.
After Cerebus wrapped up, he started doing a book called Glamour Puss, like a monthly sketchbook, where it's him trying to work in the styles of other artists and trying to craft some sorts of narratives. A lot of editorial material in there. And then when that book failed, he did Judenhaus, which was a extra-length story about the Holocaust. And he actually distributed. He recently allowed that to be in the. I don't know if it's in the public domain or if it's just that he allows it for free, unrestricted distribution of this book. You can get it online free now. And he was doing covers for companies like IDW and just kind of doing odds and sods. I think he's been helping with the production of the Cerebus movie that he still hasn't officially approved coming into existence. But he's basically said he won't do anything to fight a movie coming into existence. It's just not authorized by him. So I don't know. He's just kind of doing his thing. I guess he's still making money off free prints, but I understand he made some pretty good money at one point in time. I don't think he's exactly flush these days.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what he's doing to stay afloat, but he's one of these guys, after you've been working on a passion project for the better part of 30 years, it's like, what do you do after that? And I don't think he's figured that out yet. So
usually it goes the other way around, right? Like you work your ass off forever to then do your dream at the end of your career. And when you kind of start out with it, you're like, it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it didn't help that he went off the rails in those last 100 issues, and I'm sure that keeping the book afloat until it ended probably diminished his, because there was a time where he used to show up at all conventions in limos. He was like the poster child for the successful independent comic book, showing that if you can actually make a book successful outside of the big two, you would reap the benefits of that. He was like seriously flush in the 80s especially, and people just envy the hell out of him. I don't think you would have had Image without Dave Sim, because he showed that was an option, a legitimate option for top artists. So, and that's probably why Dave Sim was one of the early guests on Spawn as a writer and wrote possibly the single best issue of Spawn ever published.
Right. I mean, it makes sense. But that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, so's he, so that's part of the problem.
Well, yeah, that too.
He seems like a nice fella. When you see him in interviews, even recent interviews, he seems like an all right guy. He's got his, you spend too many years alone and get up to some weird weird thoughts in your head, and it affects the rest of your life, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened to Frank Miller. I mean, everybody loved Frank Miller, and then he spent too many years at a drawing table listening to right-wing rhetoric, and now he's a nutcase.
Yeah. It's crazy to hear the way people talk about Frank Miller.
Yeah, because he was revered. People loved him. He was like, he was a comic book god, and now people speak of him so dismissively, and it's because so much of his output over the last 15, 20 years has been terrible.
I'm the goddamn Batman.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of forgive that, though. I seriously believe that that's him doing a Batman parody under everybody's radar. I really do think he did that as a joke, as a way of like deflating that character. But that doesn't explain Holy Terror, the book he did that was so Islamophobic that DC refused to publish it as a Batman book, and he ended up turning his Batman character into, I don't remember what the guy's name was, the Avenger or some crap like that. But he just like shaved the ears off and covered up the bat symbol and published it as a whole different book because DC didn't want anything to do with it by the time he was done with it. It's really bad and really racist, and I don't think that was done with a sense of humor. I think that was him exercising some demons. Plus things he said about stuff like Occupy Wall Street, where he said that they were all a bunch of rapists and stuff. It's like, what?
Jesus.
So he just kind of went out there. You know they're making a third Dark Knight book too, right?
No.
Yeah, you knew they did the sequel.
It sounds
vaguely.
Oh, because I think that was like awful.
Yeah, it was really, really bad. Yeah, because Lynn Varney went from being at the vanguard of comic coloring with her painted colors over Frank Miller in the 80s, and then when they did Dark Knight Strikes Again, she's doing like rudimentary Photoshop filters and stuff, like stuff that everybody had already come and gone with. Yeah. And then Frank's art had deteriorated to such a degree that it was almost hard to look at. It made you feel bad, and the story was garbage. And he rewrote it because 9/11 happened during the production of the book, and so it vastly altered what he was doing with it. And the sad thing is, if you look at like some of the stuff that Zack Snyder's doing, I kind of feel like Zack Snyder might have used that book as an influence on his movies. But anyway, so they're going to do a third one, and the main stories are going to be drawn by Andy Kubert with Klaus Janson inking him, which sounds like an interesting combination.
That is a very interesting combination.
Yeah. And then there are going to be backup stories involving the Dark Knight universe, which, you see, in the original Dark Knight, you didn't really feel a sense of a universe. It was really about Batman and Superman and Robin. That's about it. And then one of the things that muddied things up with Dark Knight Strikes Again is they brought in all the classic DC heroes, the Green Lantern and the Atom. And sometimes that was kind of cool, but it made the book even less focused than it already was by having all these little side stories. So I guess he's going to address those characters in backup strips now that are going to be drawn by different artists.
Yeah, I think. So what book was that where he did the I'm the Goddamn Batman? What was that?
That's All-Star Batman. That's what he did with Jim Lee.
Right. And so that was what threw it off with me is whenever I see those pics, people post those fucking panels all over the place. Is it Jim Lee's drawing it?
Yeah, Jim Lee drew it.
It doesn't work with
Scott Williams.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Well, like the humor doesn't work to me because
for me it works because it's so looks like it's supposed to be this commercial property, but I think it's a satire. I don't think it's a good satire. I don't think it's funny. But I think he is still ultimately making fun of superhero comics and Batman.
Yeah, I think so. Like I remember, wasn't there a page where to fight Green Lantern, he painted himself yellow and the whole room yellow. Yeah. But because Jim Lee drew it,
it didn't work.
It doesn't work. Yeah. Like it doesn't work. It's like you just think Frank Miller may have completely lost his mind, right? Instead of thinking that it's some sort of satire. So Well, it reminds me of too is there's a scene in Cosmic Odyssey which Mike Mignola drew, Jim Starlin wrote it, where it's a straight epic sci-fi story and you get this real big sense of scale. But then there's this one panel where the planet that was blown up because Jon Stewart got arrogant and thought he was going to take on the main big bad, and he shows up and he finds the bomb is completely yellow, he can't do anything about it, and so the whole planet blows up, right? Well, the demonic entity that painted it yellow happened to look suspiciously like DC editor Andy Helfer and was drawn in a caricatured style that resembled Kyle Baker. So to some degree that takes you out of the story, and then in another way it's almost like we know this is kind of a dumb idea, but we're going to turn into the skid of it, and hopefully you'll just kind of go with it, and it works because you know that they're kind of taking the piss out of themselves. Yeah. But on the other hand, I want to say there might have actually been a sequence All-Star, or maybe somebody's making a joke about it, where like urine gets involved in taking down Green Lantern, like he's pissing on Green Lantern because it's yellow too. Because it's yellow?
Yeah, there was some kind of thing like that, and that's just bad humor. Yeah, and I don't know that actually happened, but that's the kind of mindset that went into the All-Star one.
Yeah, but I can imagine when that came out, Frank Miller wasn't quite a joke yet, right?
All-Star?
Yeah.
He was getting there.
So when you hear but when you hear Frank Miller plus Jim Lee plus Batman,
oh yeah, no, at the time they're like, oh damn. The thing of it is, I think the thing that started the real backlash against Miller was Dark Knight Strikes Back, because the Sin City quality had taken a dip over the years. It went from being something that everybody was trying to emulate to something that had kind of seemed to have been forgotten about and set aside by people. That people just seemed to pay attention to the later Sin City stories. But I want want to say he scripted like stuff like Spawn Batman was one of those deals where people thought he was just sort of, again, taking the piss, and they kind of forgave him for it. But he did 2 Spawn stories like that where they're just bad and seem like they're almost like, is he doing this on purpose? Is this a gag, or is he just bad writing? And as he's written Batman in that fashion more and more over the years, it's like, no, maybe this is just how he thinks that should be written.
Right.
But it just seemed to me like All-Star was too ridiculous. It's like, I don't see how anybody could write that down and think that it was going to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So I hope he was just like, he did his Batman story in 86 and all these other ones have just been goofs. But Strikes Back did seem like he was trying to do a more serious story, and it's still a laughable
It was really
story.
bad.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We got retweets from A Moment of Cerebus, Adam Black Moon, Ange, CJ, David Fior, DS and RS, Eternal Rage, J.L. Roberson, and the Top 5 Road Crew, as well as favorites from A Moment of Cerebus, Adam Black Moon, Andrew Walker, Cerebus Film, CJ, David Fior, Eli Ilperin, Ellis Martin, Eternal Rage, Firestorm Fan, J.L. Roberson, Top 5 Road Crew, and Treasure Chronicles. Joseph Crawford wrote, thanks for the recommendation. Now I can buy weird, obscure books with confidence. And I believe he was sending us a picture of his copy of the Slings and Arrows Guide to Comics. David Fior wrote, Cerebus next day. Looking forward to it. I've got the underguides bookmarked in pocket casts. Eternal Rage just wrote the quote, the Bible's indie dude. I was never a fan of Minimum Wage either, Fixit. I've never read Cerebus, but this may get me to read it. Anything you say about that?
Which one?
Minimum Wage or Cerebus?
I actually want to read Cerebus. The way you talked it up, it seems really interesting. I've actually noticed that I've started reading more and more indie stuff because the mainstream stuff is just, I'm so out of the loop with all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
I feel I just can't keep up with it. So I've been picking up a lot more indie stuff. So yeah, Cerebus is definitely on my, at least in the next month or so, I'm going to definitely pick it up and start reading it.
Okay, so I was doing my comic book order earlier this week, and I'm noticing, like, I buy 2 floppy comic books every month, and then everything else is like Dark Horse and Image.
But there was something independent I was reading just recently that I actually quite enjoyed. Let's see, I read 30 Days of Nights. The second part was okay.
What was that again? I couldn't quite hear you.
30 Days of Nights.
Oh, okay.
Steve Niles, or was it Niels?
Yeah, I think it's Niles. Was that Darkest
books.
Days? Is that what that's called?
Yeah, the first one was 30 Days of Night, and I'm reading the sequel, and I read the sequel, and I thought it was pretty good. I got my hands on the next 3 trades of Scalped, which I really want to read, because I think I stopped at trade 5 or 6.
Yeah, I still got to get you the copy of Southern Bastards so you can read it, and we can talk about that one too.
Really?
Remember we did that one? You remember when we recorded that one thing?
Southern Bastards?
Huh?
Who wrote Southern Bastards?
Jason Aaron.
Oh, I definitely got to read. Right now, he's on the top of my list, dude, of writers. I'm really, really enjoying. What was it? It just slipped my mind now. Shit, it was somebody I was reading that they usually write other stuff. Oh, I was reading Black Science.
Oh yeah, I need to read that. I've got a copy of that too.
It's enjoyable, dude. I enjoy it so far. It's very Sliders meets Quantum Leap meets John Holmes fucking kind of shit. Like, it's just really weird. Like, there's villains and I don't know. It's just weird, real trippy. It almost reminds me of an early 1980s heavy metal comic. The art style, like, very just, I don't know. I'm digging it though.
Yeah, I really disliked Rick Remender when he was first getting started in comics. I think I read Sea of Red, and I disliked it immensely. And everything I read by him, it felt like he was trying to pitch a screenplay to somebody, like he was trying to come up with a property that he could option. Yeah. But recently I've enjoyed more of his work. I think since he worked at Marvel and he's gotten more into writing comics for comics rather than feeling like he's trying to write for another medium. And the one that's really started to turn me around was Deadly Class. I'm enjoying that one quite a bit. If anything, that's him pitching a Netflix series, which I'm fine with. And it's one of those where I'd read the first trade and it took me a little while to get into it. And then by the end, though, I was really down for it. And then when I was doing my little Cannonball read, I'd only read the first issue of the second trade, and I was like, okay, I don't need to read anymore. I'll worry about this next month because I know I want to get the next trade just based on that first issue in the second trade. So I'm enjoying his stuff as well these days.
Cool. I definitely have to check that out.
Well, I know you were really into his stuff on X-Force too, right?
Yeah, I really liked his stuff on X-Force. I liked his take on X-Force and kind of the direction he took it in. But I like I said, I guess you're right. He kind of does, some of his work does seem kind of kitschy, like it's a pitch type stuff. I'm trying to think of some other stuff I've read of his. Well, no, I really liked, what was the one that, Space Cowboy?
Fear Agent?
Fear Agent. I really liked Fear Agent.
Because of my prejudice, I never gave it a try, but I've heard good things about that one. People like the Tony Moore art a lot,
I got
too.
the whole series of Bar, dude. It's a fun read.
I can dig into that.
All over the place.
Yeah.
Next,
CJ wrote, "We all know collectors. They don't all collect comics. Statues are a collection for value or not." So that's based on my little rant to get. It wasn't really a rant. I was just being a bit dismissive of people who are collectors of comics for their value, for their investment value.
Speculators.
Yeah, but I mean, as long as you're reading it and enjoying it, you're not just doing it for sell on eBay in 10 years or some shit like that. Then I'm cool with that.
Those days are gone, dude. Those days are long gone.
No, you can still flip stuff.
Anyone who buys a comic today is like, ooh, I'm going to pay for my kid's college down the road. It's like, no, you're full of shit, dude. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, but you can still flip them.
The medium is so large, and there's so many different books. But go ahead.
Okay. David Fior wrote, "A nice beginning to the Cerebus coverage. It's true that issue number 3's Red Sophia is an ominous sign on the gender front. I know the phone books are the only sensible way to go, but you definitely lose something without the early letter calls and notes from the editor, Denis Loubert. That stuff really captures the excitement of launching an indie book." And I can kind of feel that a little bit because what I read, I finally figured it out. I read a book called Cerebus Bi-Weekly, where it was a reprint series, and I think they had editorial back matter in those, and I liked reading them in issue installments. Sometimes you pick up that telephone book, and it just feels so heavy, it's hard to get started reading it, So.
Yeah.
That's why, I'm going to loan you Cerebus when I'm done with it, but fuck, it's going to be a while. And I just ordered they're doing that remastering series where they're going back and they're rescanning the art from the original pages and doing it with modern technology and a ton of additional detail, especially Gerhard's backgrounds are coming in on those. But they're only coming out about every 6 months or so. So this is the third one I've ordered, but I'm only maybe halfway through the first of the telephone books, so it's a lot to take in.
Is it a very deep read?
Not yet. Not at this point.
Okay.
Because I did a second installment of 6 issues with Mac. And I was just telling him the stuff, and it was just starting to kind of feel like you were getting an overall story instead of just episodic adventures.
Okay.
Okay, so Ange wrote, "I missed the first episode somehow, so glad I was here for this one. Like many, I went through a period of indie during my late high school, early college years. Although for me, that mostly meant early Vertigo when it was brilliant. I am holding out hope that American Flag will eventually be covered here. Later, I went back to the big two almost exclusively at a time when adult life was weighing down on me, and I needed some old-fashioned escapism. Now I find I am all over the map, basically 1/3 Marvel, 1/3 DC, 1/3 indie. But I suppose even my indie choices are relatively tame. Casanova, Danger Club, Flash Gordon, 8, Fade Out, etc. I tend to follow creators to those books instead of blindly sampling. Danger Club went on hiatus because of some medical issue with one of the creative team, but I highly recommend it. This isn't just a Lord of the Flies thing. This is a commentary on comics and the rebooting of universes in a metatext way. I review the book on my site. It is funny to hear you guys talk about Garth Ennis. I bought and read his Hellblazer, but I was way more into the troubled Delano Jenkins Constantine than Ennis's raised middle finger John, so I have steered clear of his stuff. Any comments on that?
No, I mean, I own Paul Jenkins Constantine stuff, and that's good. But Garth Ennis, he's one of those guys. I think once in a while he gets on a book and he really raises the bar. He did it with the Punisher. He did it with Constantine. I'm still finishing up The Boys. I think it's a fantastic series. The Demon, still one of my personal favorite runs of his. I think every time he touches something, he kind of raises the bar every time. So
I think he has to have an affinity for the material. He did a lot of hack work in the late 90s, and that's what burned me out on him. I know he made a lot of money doing that, but I went from being a real hardcore Garth Ennis fan to where I decided I was going to follow Hitman in the trades, and I never got around to buying the trades. And I went for years where I just didn't read anything by him, and only in recent years have I started to go back and check some of his stuff out. Like, I still need to read that Caliban miniseries trade paperback that I've got sitting on the shelf. And
some of his Cross stuff is great too.
And I've not read any Crossed at all. I mean, I've sampled pages here and there, but I've like one book from beginning to end I've never read. No. What was the other one too? Oh yeah, the Wormwood, which is something we ought to talk about on one of these episodes sometime. Oh, yeah. I really enjoyed those when I went back to them. But yeah, Ennis for me, I understand that people enjoyed the Constantine of Moore and Delano, and that Garth Ennis went in a very different direction from what they did. It's just that for me, that was the stuff that grabbed me. I tried to read the earlier stuff. I've tried to read stuff that came afterwards. I've enjoyed individual stories, but in terms of a run, I've never hooked into that character the way I did when Garth Ennis was writing him.
I concur.
Yeah. Hey, you've still got my first volume of Danger Club, don't you?
I think so, yeah. It should be on my shelf.
You read it, didn't you?
Not yet.
Yeah, okay. I've got the second and final volume.
Okay,
so.
I got so much shit stacked. It's like, I walked in there the other day in my office, I looked on the shelf and I was like, fuck, I haven't even started reading half this stuff. So I'm just going through floppies right now.
You would like Danger Club, though, if you check it out.
Really?
Yeah. It's
I'll definitely.
Did you like Brat Pack? Did you like Brat Pack?
Yeah, of course, dude.
It's like Brat Pack, but, some of the edges are smoothed off, but it's also a more mainstream kind of story to some degree, but it's still really dark like that. It's still, Well,
dude, Rick Veitch. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah, I think so.
Dude, his shit is really dark though. Like Brat Pack is really dark, and the art to me fits the story just because how ugly it gets sometimes.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing is you really feel like Veitch hates superheroes. Like he has a true deep animosity toward the concept, and so he is similar to Pat Mills with martial law, where the contempt is just palpable. But where I enjoy Pat Mills because he's still trying to tell a story, he still kind of hooks into his characters, even if he doesn't hook into the tropes. Veitch just hates everything about the characters that he's dealing with, and I respect that. It's very punk rock, but it's also alienating for me because I don't have an emotional attachment. I just am impressed with the bileful quality of the work.
Yeah.
And Danger Club is another one where they tell you a story, but they're also doing dark, fucked up shit to teenage heroes. So.
Okay, I'm gonna have to read that then.
Yeah,
because I definitely like Martial Law is one of those books that is it's one of my top favorites.
Oh, by the way,
I've lost count how many times I've read it, huh?
Yeah, I bought a bunch of copies of Amazing Heroes. I really scored. I go to conventions all the time, and I'm always trying to find copies of that magazine. You know Amazing Heroes? It was like a
actually, I think I have some. Are you talking about the British format, the large book?
No. Amazing Heroes was actually it was a comic format magazine. It was sort of like the prototype of Wizard, but this one was really a good magazine where that one wasn't.
Yeah, I'd have to check it out.
So anyway, as I was going through these books, I found an article where it was an interview with the creative team of Martial Law, and what was neat is you see the black and white artwork before it was painted, and it looks so different just seeing Kevin O'Neill in black and white like that. So just brought it up since you mentioned it.
Okay. Yeah. Next.
What about Casanova? Did you ever read that one?
I haven't read Casanova yet.
I've got the first hardcover. It didn't hook me, so.
Any good?
It didn't hook me, so I never made it past the first volume. I'd have to reread it to see how it works for me. Matt Fraction's a guy, I kind of like him, I kind of respect him, but I've yet to read a book by him that so completely blew me away that I'm like, yeah, I'm a fan of this guy.
No, it's kind of a hit and miss for me too.
Yeah. And did you ever read American Flag?
American Flag.
That's the Howard Chaykin book?
Yeah. I have read the Alan Moore stuff that he wrote. Alan Moore wrote a small arc.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
I think I have a tray. Well, that's when I was on my Alan Moore kick where I was like collecting everything Alan Moore. And I was buying these really obscure books where he did like one fucking story arc or
sure.
two
like
issues.
The Vigilante issues he did and shit like that.
Yeah, the Green Lantern stuff. What was that DC character? Not a Hitman.
I told you, Vigilante.
Vigilante. Yeah, that's one. I don't know. I was on that. So I have some. I've read some of it. I still don't understand how the universe works. I actually have a trade, the first trade. I still haven't read it. So
the Across the DC Universe, or whatever it's called. Yeah. American Flag for me. See, I was really into First Comics, especially in my teenage years. I really dug that company. And there were certain key properties, particularly Grimjack, that were just totally for me at that point in time in my life. And I read some American Flag, and of course, advertisements for that book are all over First Comics throughout their initial run. But it was one of those that didn't ever quite grab me. And it's funny because Fraction and Chaykin worked together on Satellite Sam, and I know that one was a heavy influence on the other, and I'm wondering if maybe that's one of the reasons why I couldn't get into Fraction because of the Chaykin influence.
No, we need to sit down and have make a list of independent books we need to read and then discuss.
Yeah, but also there's the ones that I was telling you about I've already read and I've got a stack just sitting here. So all you have to do is pick one, read it, and we got another episode.
What we should do is we should take out of the 80s, we take several books out of the 80s, several books out of the 90s. some of her books in the 2000 and kind of read, like, I'll let you pick up, you're so well versed in the indie book series, in the scene, but just kind of find books like, martial law. I mean, some stuff is going to be a gimme, but like, find
all three of us want to do martial law. It's a matter of actually getting us all on the same page to sit down and read it.
Yeah, because that's my gospel right there. I've read the damn trade so many times. It's pathetic.
Well, and I think I even handed Mac my copy of the original printing of Fear and Loathing, the epic one, the beat up copy I had, because you and I've got the big DC omnibus now. So
I still have the poster you gave me.
I don't even remember that.
The martial law poster,
Nah.
Dude. This was, I think you and I were maybe friends for about a year or so, and I remember I came over to your house. You had that apartment, the upstairs apartment.
Okay.
And we were hanging out one time, and we were talking about martial law, and you're like, yeah, I got these posters. I'll never hang them up. You're like, I'll never hang these posters up. And they were like, I had never seen these posters before. And you're like, hey, man, you want them? I was like, sure. And I had, at one point, I thought about, let me hang them up, but I'm like, dude, these things are just too pretty to stick pins into.
Right.
So I actually went and bought this special container that's made for like important drafts and shit like that. But you can hold posters in there, and I put them in there, and it comes like, it's pretty cool. It has like a little case and everything. And the other day, I was at mom's, and I was going through, and I found it. I'm like, what the hell is this? I open it. Sure enough, dude, there's all these old ass posters in there, like just mint, dude, untouched, unbent and stuff. So I was thinking, man, maybe I should frame these up. It'd be kind of nice.
I love when I'm digging through my crap.
I don't think they print those anymore, right?
Oh, they still make posters, but you'd be damned.
But not of those.
Not of that though. No, I love when I'm going through my old crap and I find like this time capsule of like, oh my god, I completely forgot this. I ever had this stuff, and I still had this stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Count Druncula wrote, after listening to Frank and Fixit talk about Bedlam, I decided to check it out on Comixology, and it turns out, hey, at some point I downloaded the first issue and never read it, so I gave it a read this morning. First thoughts: I'm extremely happy that this story wasn't about an obvious Joker Batman knockoff, was not told in a Batman comic. Although I can absolutely see a story like this being DC's 2016 follow-up to the evil Superman of Injustice Gods Among Us and the Joker variant covers, and whatever the hell Jared Leto does with the character in Suicide Squad Max. Nick Spencer is a talented writer, and this story is interesting from a cultural philosophical point, but it felt way too much like the characters were talking in metatextual ideas about the nature of crime and punishment. Like Matt Red and the city councilman both grew up reading Batman comics, wondering what it would take for Gotham to execute the Joker, and then talking about those hypotheticals in page-long monologues. This wasn't dialogue. This wasn't characters speaking to each other. This was point-counterpoint essays in fanzines or message boards. In short, Spencer's idea of the story got in the way of the actual plot. Loved Riley Rossmo's art, but I don't know if I can pick up another issue. Anything to say about that?
I think he just read way too fucking much into it, man. It's just a really cool read.
I'm wondering if he read the whole trade or if he just read that first issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of quick. That's like taking a bite out of a sandwich and then saying, you know what, this sandwich lacks this. And I'm like, you took a fucking bite. Like, you got to actually eat the meal, let it sit, kind of digest a little bit, what does it make you feel kind of thing. Because I remember I read the first one, I was like, that was okay. And then, when you get to the end, you're like, man, that's just a really good story.
Did you read the second volume?
Yeah, I did. It didn't hold up. You were right.
Okay.
I didn't like it as much.
Yeah, sorry about that, man. And I don't know when they're going to do any more anyway. Like I said, I thought they did like an issue or two after the ones that were collected, but the story arc, if it continued beyond that point, hasn't progressed since then.
No, I just treat the first one as like it's a one shot type thing. I read the first one and then that's it.
Well, if they ever make it to a third volume, I'll buy it and we'll see if it gets any better.
I still want to I got to read some more hack and slash.
Yeah, I've still got the first two volumes. I don't think I made it out of the first volume. I enjoyed it. I lost track of it. I spent too, because literally it's been a few years. I was really into it, and then I started to kind of waver a little bit, and then it's been years, so I'd pretty much have to start all over again with that one.
Sorry, my ADD took us off point. What did you think of his comments about Bedlam?
Oh,
I disagree.
I see where he's coming from. So many comic books are just about the plot that a comic book that actually has something to say about something, it interests me. I'm okay with a comic book that's just about metatext and point counterpoint and all that kind of stuff. I can actually read that as long as it holds my interest, and the first volume of Bedlam did.
Okay.
The final comment comes from Siskoid. I was a big Cerebus fan for a while and have the last couple phone books on my shelf still waiting to be read. I binged the phone books through to Mothers and Daughters, I think, then got into the singles for that arc and reads, where it got rather difficult, not just because of the highbrow misogyny. So sure, the first book is just a Conan parody, but it's in high society and church and state that it gets really interesting. The art is sharper, Sim's lettering effects are incredible, and the story gets so much deeper. And I like the mission statement. 300 issues that told the life of one character as in life. Sometimes he's a hero, sometimes he's a villain, sometimes he's on the margins. And while the phone books are a great format, the singles were very inspirational because of all the discussions at the back. The how-tos on how to do your own self-publishing, the previews of other indie books. Sims was the indie comics messiah for a while there, and I very nearly started my own self-published comic. I was unable to finance it is all, which makes me realize that I could actually self-finance the book project today, but the industry's changed too much. So it's really too bad Sim went bad. Suggestions for the future. Chester Brown stuff, Ed the Happy Clown if you can, but the rest of Yummy Fur, the autobiographical stuff would be cool too. Dan Clowes, you pick. Did I hear a musical clip from the Ghost World film? Yes, you did. Chris Ware, I love Acme Novelty Library with a passion that contradicts its innate depressingness. James Kolchaka, I'll read anything by this guy. Jeff Brown's ChangeBots books are one of my favorite things from the past few years. And Challenge, I want a reason to read Dirty Plot, an excessively obscene title for French readers. Give me one.
Okay.
Now, are you familiar with any of those?
Nope, not one of those books.
Okay, did you read that book on prostitution I gave you?
No, not yet.
Okay, so that's one.
No, dude. I next time you come over, I will show you. I have a stack the size of a small child from a third world country of books that I have not gotten to.
Okay, well that's one of them down. Dan Clowes, you want to read, say, Ghost World or Caricature?
Oh yeah, Ghost World. I haven't read that in a while.
Or
we should actually read.
How about Velvet?
We need to read that and then watch the movie.
Okay, we could do that, or also Velvet Glove Cast and Iron would be a good one.
Yeah, I want to check that one out too.
Cool. You ever read any Chris Ware?
What was that?
Chris Ware.
What about it?
Have you ever read any of his stuff?
Nope.
I read Acme Novelty Library, a few of them when he was still in floppy, but I never went past that. So I know that he's like revered now, but I never got past a few of the floppies. It looked pretty. It seemed very depressing. I never, I didn't get further into that. James Kolchaka though, or Kochalka, I don't know how you pronounce it. I've read little bits and pieces of his stuff, and I enjoy him. He's pretty fun. Dirty Plot. I want to say that's the Julie Doucette book, who I think is French or French Canadian, and I read like one issue of her comic frickin' 25 years ago, so I would not be the guy who could sell Siskoid on this book. But good, so we're on the same page. We're willing to check out some more deeper indie stuff.
Well, I still want to read that one. I remember you were telling me a long time ago that comic that some guy wrote where the artwork looks like a 10-year-old drew it, about the frog.
Oh yeah, the True Swamp.
Yeah, for some reason that book has always been on my mind.
Yeah, it's the existentialism. I kind of can see you in that frog actually, where your head gets really, because that's one of the things that was interesting about that character is that the lead character, the frog, was an existentialist, and he would just get lost in these mind trips about the meaning of life and the universe and everything else. And I could see you in that character.
Oh no, absolutely. I do that. Fuck, just driving to work, man. I'm like, why am I here? Am I just a dust mite in the universe? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll add it to the list. The good thing with that one too is, while I know the art would be hard for you to get through because it's so simplistic, I don't remember it being like super dialogue heavy. I know there was a fair amount of dialogue, but I don't think it was so dense that it'd be prohibitive. And because the art was so loose and light, I think you could probably get through those relatively quickly. I'll have to dig them up and see how they look today.
All right, we'll definitely put that on the list.
Cool, Modi?
Guys is a Rolled Spine podcast. All references to copyrighted works and audio clips employed are believed covered under fair use, with no infringement intended against their copyright holders. The views expressed in this podcast are assumed legitimate, truthful, and solely possessed by the speaker.